What is going on, everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to change the oil in your Dodge Durango or Dakota from 2000 to 2004. Should be the same steps basically for the 97 to 2000 as well, just different engines. The reason I'm saying 2000 to 04 is because that's when they were using the 4.7 liter, and then a little bit later on they were using the 3.7, which are kind of sister engines, just minus 2 cylinders for the V6. So the first thing we're going to do is start the truck up, let it warm up the oil a little bit. A couple of reasons there. A, when it's warmer, it'll flow better, so you won't be sitting as long waiting for it to drain. And for two, the warmer oil kind of suspends all the particles in the oil better. That way you'll get all the contaminants out when you drain it, as opposed to them laying in the bottom of the pan. Now, it doesn't need to be all the way up to operating temp. As you can see, mine's just kind of right above the low temp mark, which is good enough. Now I'm going to shut the truck off, and I'm actually going to leave it sit for about 10 or 15 minutes, just because I don't want the oil to be too hot to touch. And then also letting it sit for 10 or 15 minutes will allow all the oil from the top half of the engine, you know, up in the cams, in the heads, it'll allow all that to drain back down into the pan. So when we do drain it, it'll still be warm, it'll still have the oil, the particles suspended in the oil, it'll still flow better, but we won't be burning ourselves, and we'll be getting most of the oil out. All right, the truck's been sitting for about 10 or 15 minutes, and as you can see, it's basically right at that line. So it did come down a little bit like I anticipated, and now we're gonna go ahead and drop the drain plug. All right, so the truck calls for 5W30, I believe, if I can recall correctly. Actually doesn't say on here. I believe it calls for 530. You can revert to your owner's manual. So I'm using 530 max life Valvoline, high mileage, because I'm about 197,000 on Old Girl now, and we're going into winter. So the synthetic blend is gonna flow a little bit better than your typical normal conventional oil. And then I got a Wix XP full synthetic filter. With the synthetic blend or synthetic, I typically run 5,000 to 7,000 miles on an oil change, so long as you're getting the extended filter with it. If you're running conventional oil, I would change it 3,000 to 4,000 miles, give or take. So the Wix is a pretty good filter. It's basically, a performance filter. It's better than a Fram by far, so that's why I'm using that. So we're gonna go ahead, drain the oil now. I'll post product links in the description for a couple different weights and types of oil, as well as filters and filter wrench if you need it. Now the nice part is, if you have a four-wheel drive, you should be able to kind of get under it if you're fairly skinny. Otherwise, if you can't get under it, or if it's a two-wheel drive, probably a good idea to jack up the front end or put it up on some blocks or up on some ramps just to get under it a little bit better. Not sure about the V6 or on the Durangos, but on the Dakota with the V8, the drain plug is on the back side of the axle, so I come in back here. The drain plug is a 13 millimeter. All right, so we're behind the front axle here. Here's the drive shaft. There's the sway bar up there. As you can see, here's the drain plug. Don't get it mixed up with the transmission. I don't think the tranny has a drain plug anyway, actually, but so the drain plug's right here. Again, it's a 13 millimeter. Gonna go ahead and crack it loose now. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. Now, as you can see, I've got the drain pan, just the edge of it, the far edge of it, is under the drain plug, because it angles backwards. So when we take this out, I'm gonna pull the plug out of the way real quick, and it's gonna kind of shoot way back here. We don't want to make a big leak, big mess on the driveway. There we go. You can adjust the pan if you need to. And now we're just gonna let it drain for a good 10-15 minutes. I like to do a thorough oil change. I don't just cram the plug back in right away. I like to let it drip a bit, get the most out of it. While the oil's draining, I like to inspect the plug, see if you have any metal on it or anything. It should have a magnet. I don't have anything. It's looking good. I like to wipe the seal off so it's nice and dry, so the plug is clean when I reinstall it. And now's a good time to replace the plug if you need to. As you can see, I'm not sure what's going on here, but the rubber's starting to kind of pull through, which this is the seal, so should get replaced. I'll put a product link in the description where you can click on and get a drain plug if you need it. If the 3.7 and the 4.7 are different, I will list it. Otherwise, wipe it off, get it nice and clean, get it ready for reinstallation. All right, now I'm not sure about on the Durangos, but on the Dakotas, there's usually a big black filler panel here with a little circle piece that you grab and rotate. It's got a little door that swings down so you can access the filter. I've removed mine because I think it's kind of stupid. It's not hardly any more aerodynamic, and it allows for much better access to everything. I'm a little spoiled. I have 2 drain pans, so while the pan is draining, I have another pan here. We're going to loosen up the filter. If you can't get it loose by hand, again, I'll post a link in the description where you can get a filter wrench, but you'll loosen it up. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. And you can let it drip for a bit. Of course, it's going to make a big mess all over everything. And we'll let that drain a little bit. All right, we're gonna get the new filter ready here. Again, I'll post this in the description, a couple different options. I thought that was a piece of sticker or something, but it's just a marking. All right, so I like to pre-fill my filter. A lot of people don't, they just spin it on. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but just keep in mind, you know, this is gonna hold about half of this. So if you just put this up dry and you start your engine's gonna run with no oil pressure until this fills up, which, you know, it only takes about 1 second or so, but I like to give my engine the most longevity and lubrication possible. So I'm gonna pre-fill this. Now it does go on at kind of an angle like that, so I'm not gonna fill it to the brim, but you know, about half, so that when it tilts, it doesn't run out. Pour it down into there. And if it fills all the way up, it's not a huge deal because the filter will absorb some of it and the fluid level will go down. As you can see, it just did there. It's at about the halfway mark, so that's good enough for me. I'm gonna take a little bit of this excess oil and give the O-ring a coat, just so it tightens up without binding. And it should make it so the filter comes off easier next time. Also make sure that your old filter O-ring comes off. If the O-ring or gasket is still on there and you tighten this on there, anytime you double gasket something, it's gonna leak really bad. So make sure your old one comes off. If it's still stuck up there, make sure you pull it off. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and wipe off the mating surface a little bit, so any grit and grime or dirty oil is out of the way. And that way we can double check again, make sure that it's not gonna double gasket. Go ahead and get our filter up into place. If you've overfilled it, it'll just run out a little bit, not a big deal. And there's usually tightening instructions on some of these. I can't see it now because it's, you know, too far up there and I didn't read it in advance. But usually it's until it bottoms out like this and then about a half turn. So you really only have to put them on by hand if you got good grip strength. You can use 2 hands too if you have to. Some people like to tighten them down with a wrench. This is about good, so long as you can't just spin it right off. You can always double check it again a week later and tighten it if you have to. Just make sure not to grab it when the engine's hot, because the oil temp is going to be actually higher than the coolant temp. So this could be upwards of 240 degrees. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead and wipe down everything that got covered in oil, just to keep grime from building up and anything leaking on driveways or anything. Otherwise, if I see a mystery puddle of oil on the ground, I'm gonna think something's leaking, when in reality it was just all this junk. All right, now you can see it's still dripping a little bit. Ideally, I'd like to let it go a little longer, but I'm in a little bit of a time crunch here. So what I'm gonna do is just start it. And then what I do is I take a rag, wipe the droplets off. And if you are really meticulous like me, you can kind of use the rag to floss between the drain bolt and the oil pan to get all of the oil out of there. So I don't like grimy, oily things. I like my stuff clean if possible. Again, 13 millimeter. Replace the plug if you have to. I don't have the torque spec for the drain plug. I would guess somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20 foot-pounds, give or take. I'm just gonna tighten it. As you can see right here, it just kind of bottomed out. It's tight now. And I'm just gonna give it a little extra 1/16 of a turn, maybe, if that. As you can see, that's about all I did. And that's tight as you need to go. All right, now we're going to remove the oil fill cap. They should be the same on the 3.7 as it is the 4.7. And these can get kind of tight and hard to pull off. So if you're having a hard time, use two hands, or you might even have to put like an oil filter wrench on it or something to loosen it. But rotate counterclockwise, pull it up. Shouldn't need a funnel for it because it's so big, but if you want, use a funnel. I've got the V8 again, which I know takes 6 quarts or a little bit more. You'll have to check if you have the V6. This is a 5-quart jug, so I'm gonna go ahead and pour the whole thing in. It does have a little spout, so I'm gonna attempt to do this without spilling too much because I don't have a funnel with me right now. Oh yeah. Like I said, this takes 6 quarts at least, I believe, so I'm just gonna pour this whole thing in. Gotta get the most out of it. Now I'm gonna take the bottle that I opened already to fill the filter and pour that in as well. Again, if you have the V6, I would probably put the oil fill cap on at this point and fire it up and check where you're at. This being the 4.7, and I know it takes more. I'm gonna pour this one in, then we'll check it. Just a side note here, sometimes when I've taken these caps off, I've seen like kind of a little bit of milky substance or some water, condensation. A little bit of condensation is normal just from the heating and cooling of the engine, but if it's really bad, like gray or really, really white and thick and kind of milky and, you know, thicker oil, you might want to check for coolant contamination. That is one of the failure points on these engines if you overheat it or the head gasket goes bad. You should know though if you're getting coolant in the oil when you drain it, because it would either be very milky, or when you pull the drain plug out, coolant would run out before the oil because oil is lighter and floats above the coolant. Back on topic here, we're gonna go and reinstall this. Make sure it's nice and flat. Make sure it's not cocked. We're gonna go ahead and fire up the truck. Let it run for about 30 seconds to get good oil pressure, and then we'll shut it down. Give it a second, oil pressure gauge, there we go. Should come up, slowly climbing. Doesn't need to run very long, 15-30 seconds, just enough to pump oil to everything. That's probably good there. We'll shut her down. Now I'm gonna go ahead and let it sit for another 5 minutes or so, just to let the oil settle, and we'll check the level. All right, it's been sitting for a few minutes. The oil should be pretty well settled now. Want to make sure you're on level ground when you're checking the level. Go ahead and pull it out. Now, right now we have 6 quarts in it. Like I said, this is the 4.7, and as you can hopefully see, it's right at the bottom of the top safe mark, the line there. So we are perfect. Double check it again, maybe next time you fill up your gas, and top it off if necessary. We're done here though. Just dispose of your oil and close the hood. If this video helped you out, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more videos like this, and check me out on Facebook at Tony the Truck Guy. Thanks for watching.